I'm Kimberly Reynolds, 32, a tech executive who built my career from nothing. After years of saving every penny, I finally purchased my dream seaside villa in Cape Cod, my sanctuary and symbol of success. I never imagined my own parents would betray me while I was 6,000 miles away on a business trip. What they didn't know was that their decision would unravel decades of family secrets that none of us were prepared to face. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family take advantage of your success. Trust me, what happened next in this story will make your jaw drop. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, I always felt like an outsider in my own family. Our modest two-story home on Maple Street housed 4 people, but seemed to have emotional space for only 3. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Reynolds, never explicitly said they favored my younger sister Stephanie, but their actions spoke volumes. When Stephanie needed new soccer cleats, they appeared within days. When I needed a scientific calculator for advanced math, I was told to save my babysitting money. Stephanie's artwork covered the refrigerator while my academic awards gathered dust in a drawer. This wasn't about money, it was about attention and validation that seemed perpetually out of reach for me. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, I became fiercely independent. I threw myself into academics, recognizing early that education would be my ticket to a different life. While Stephanie breezed through high school with average grades and an active social life, I graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to MIT. College wasn't easy. The scholarship covered tuition, but little else. I worked 3 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a coffee shop, weekend hours at the campus library, and tutoring other students in the evenings. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, but freedom from financial dependence on my parents was worth every exhausted moment. My roommate Diane would often find me asleep on my textbooks, gently wake me, and remind me to eat something. "You're going to work yourself to death," she'd say with genuine concern. But I knew what I was working toward, a future where I answered to no one but myself. When I landed my first job at a promising tech startup, my starting salary was more than my parents made combined. Their reaction wasn't pride, but uncomfortable silence followed by my father's dismissive, "Don't let it go to your head, Kimmy." These tech bubbles burst all the time. Meanwhile, Stephanie had dropped out of community college after 1 semester, cycling through retail jobs and increasingly concerning relationships. Her first gambling problem surfaced when she was 23. She'd accumulated $15,000 in casino debts during weekend trips to Atlantic City with a boyfriend. My parents called me in panic, and I paid it off, the first of many financial rescues. "It's just a phase," my mother assured me. "She's young and made a mistake." She promised never to do it again. But promises meant little to Stephanie. 2 years later, it was $27,000 in online poker debts. Then $35,000 lost betting on sports. Each time, my parents would call me in tears, and each time, I would transfer the money, partly out of love for my sister, but mostly because I couldn't bear their disappointment if I refused. By 29, I had been promoted to Executive Vice President of Product Development. My company had gone public, my stock options had vested, and I finally had enough for my dream, a gorgeous 3-bedroom villa on the Cape Cod shoreline. The $1.8 million property wasn't just a home, it was a testament to everything I'd overcome. The first time I turned the key in that front door, I stood in the sun-drenched living room overlooking the Atlantic and wept. No one was there to witness this moment. I'd deliberately chosen to experience it alone. The hardwood floors, the soaring ceilings, the sound of waves crashing just beyond the back deck. All mine, earned through my own efforts. I furnished it carefully, selecting each piece with intention rather than rushing to fill the space. My home office faced the ocean, inspiring my best work. The guest bedrooms remained mostly empty. I wasn't ready to share this sanctuary casually, even with family. When I finally invited my parents and Stephanie for a weekend, their reactions were telling. My father walked through whistling at the extravagance. My mother continuously mentioned how the maintenance must be such a burden. Stephanie asked pointed questions about the security system and where I kept important documents. You really don't need all this space for just one person, my mother remarked over dinner on the deck. It seems wasteful. I simply smiled and poured more wine. I didn't buy it because I needed it. I bought it because I wanted it and I could. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I sat alone on the beach, watching moonlight dance across the water. The villa represented something beyond material success. It was control over my life, validation of my choices, and a physical boundary between the family dynamics that had shaped my childhood and the independent woman I'd become. Little did I know that this symbol of my independence would soon become the centerpiece of the ultimate family betrayal. The Tokyo opportunity came at the perfect moment in my career. Our company was expanding into Asian markets, and as EVP, I was the natural choice to lead negotiations with our Japanese partners. This was no ordinary business trip. Success would likely mean a promotion to Chief Operating Officer, a position I'd been working toward for years. 3 weeks in Tokyo, all expenses paid, closing a $50 million deal. I told Rebecca, my best friend since college, over lunch. This could change everything. Your parents and Stephanie will be okay without their ATM for 3 weeks? She asked, only half joking. Rebecca had witnessed too many late-night phone calls from my family asking for money. They'll have to be, I replied. I've made it clear this trip is critical. No emergencies, no drama, no financial requests until I'm back. The weekend before leaving, I visited my parents' home for dinner. Stephanie was there, unusually interested in my trip details. So the villa will just be sitting empty, she asked, twirling pasta around her fork. Aren't you worried about break-ins? I have an excellent security system and trusted neighbors who check on the property, I replied, noticing how she exchanged glances with our father. Well, if you need someone to house sit, she offered with unusual eagerness. Thanks, but it's all taken care of, I said firmly, changing the subject. My first week in Tokyo exceeded expectations. The Japanese executives respected my direct approach, and we made substantial progress on contract terms. I called my assistant Jessica each evening for updates, and, to ensure no emergencies required my attention. Everything at home seemed perfectly normal. 10 days into the trip, I was reviewing presentation materials in my hotel room when the email arrived from my father. The subject line was casual. Update on family matters. I opened it expecting mundane news. Instead, my world collapsed with a single paragraph. Kimberly, your mother and I have sold your Cape Cod property to help Stephanie out of a difficult situation. She got in deep with some casino debts again, about $1.2 million this time. We know you've always helped her in the past, and since you're so successful now, we figured you wouldn't mind. You didn't need all that space anyway, right? The new owners are taking possession next week. We've started moving your personal items to our garage. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times, convinced it was some cruel joke. My hands trembled so violently I dropped my phone. This couldn't be real. They couldn't have sold property they didn't own. It was impossible. I called my father immediately. No answer. My mother's phone went straight to voicemail. I tried Stephanie, nothing. In a panic, I called my neighbor Rachel, who lived 2 doors down from my villa. Oh, Kimberly, she said, her voice heavy with concern. There were people there yesterday with a real estate agent. Your father was giving them a tour. I thought you knew. The room seemed to spin around me. I hung up and immediately called my attorney back in Boston, not caring that it was 3 a.m. there. They can't legally sell property they don't own, he assured me, his voice groggy with sleep. Any sale would require your signature on multiple documents. But a sickening realization washed over me. My father had been my power of attorney years ago when I'd undergone emergency appendix surgery. Had I ever formally revoked it? And they had a spare key for emergencies. I'd given it to them the day I moved in. I spent the night in a haze of disbelief and betrayal, somehow managing to send my attorney the villa's documentation. At 6 a.m. Tokyo time, the confirmation I dreaded arrived. The sale had indeed gone through 3 days earlier for $1.2 million, well below market value. The signatures appeared legitimate at first glance. These would need to be examined by a forensic document specialist, my attorney said, but it appears they may have forged your signature based on old documents they had access to. I ended the call and vomited in the hotel bathroom. My sanctuary, my achievement, my home, gone. Sold by my own parents as casually as a used car. And for what? To enable my sister's gambling addiction yet again. The email from my father kept replaying in my mind. You didn't need all that space anyway, right? The dismissive assumption that my achievements were somehow less real, less earned, less mine to control than anyone else's in the family. The absolute disregard for boundaries, both legal and emotional. I had to somehow get through a major presentation to our Japanese partners in 3 hours. I splashed cold water on my face, applied concealer to my swollen eyes, and put on my most powerful suit, navy blue, with subtle pinstripes. I would not let my family take this opportunity from me, too. Somehow, I made it through the presentation on autopilot. The Japanese executives seemed impressed, asking thoughtful questions that I answered with remarkable composure, given the circumstances. No one could see that I was shattering inside. Back in my hotel room, I found another email from my mother. Kimmy, please don't be upset about the house. You're always so dramatic about these things. Stephanie really needed our help this time. These weren't nice people she owed money to. They were threatening her. Family has to come first. You can always buy another vacation home with your big salary. Love, Mom. Vacation home. As if my primary residence, my sanctuary, my life achievement was just some frivolous extra. The casual dismissal of my loss compared to Stephanie's needs was the final straw. With shaking hands but absolute clarity, I composed an email, not to my parents, but to the Boston Police Department, reporting the theft and fraud of my property valued at $1.8 million. Maintaining professional composure during crucial business negotiations while your life implodes is a special kind of torture. Every smile felt like broken glass cutting my face. Every handshake required monumental effort. Yet somehow, I got through each meeting, each dinner, each conference call without betraying the chaos consuming me. At night, alone in my hotel room, I researched legal options until my eyes burned. Property fraud, identity theft, forgery, elder abuse laws that might apply in reverse, adult child abuse. I compiled everything into organized folders, my analytical mind desperately trying to impose order on this betrayal. The Boston police detective assigned to my case, Detective Laura Morgan, contacted me via video call the morning after I filed my report. Ms. Reynolds, I want to assure you we're taking this very seriously, she said, her expression professional but compassionate. We've already frozen the proceeds from the sale and contacted the buyers to inform them they've purchased stolen property. My parents, will they be arrested? I asked, surprised by my conflicted feelings. That depends on several factors. Right now, we're securing evidence and building the case. It would help if you could return as soon as possible. I explained about the Tokyo negotiations. I can't leave for at least another week without jeopardizing a $50 million deal. I understand. We'll proceed with the investigation and be ready with updates when you return. My phone filled with increasingly frantic messages from my parents as they realized the severity of what they'd done. My father's texts evolved from dismissive, "You're overreacting as usual," to angry, "How could you do this to your own family?" to panicked, "Please call off the police. We can work this out." My mother left tearful voicemails. "Kimberly, we never meant to hurt you. We were desperate. Stephanie's life was in danger. Please understand." Stephanie remained conspicuously silent. Not a single call or message from the sister whose debts had cost me my home. By the third day after filing the police report, I could no longer hide my distress from my colleagues. During a working lunch, I knocked over a water glass, then stood frozen, watching the liquid spread across the table while tears streamed down my face. Amanda Chen, my boss and mentor, gently led me from the conference room to her hotel suite. "Something's clearly wrong. Talk to me, Kimberly." I rarely showed vulnerability at work, but the dam broke. Through tears, I explained everything. The villa, my parents' betrayal, the police investigation unfolding while I tried to focus on the deal. To my surprise, Amanda didn't offer platitudes or suggest I compartmentalize better. Instead, she listened intently, her expression darkening with each detail. "My father embezzled from his own company when I was in college," she shared unexpectedly. "Used my name on some of the accounts. It took years to clear my credit. Family financial betrayal leaves scars like nothing else." She called her assistant and rearranged our schedule, creating space for me to handle urgent calls with my attorney and detective. "The deal matters, but not at the expense of your life. We're a team, Kimberly. Let me help." Amanda even connected me with the company's legal department, who offered resources I hadn't considered. By that evening, I had a clearer picture of what awaited me at home. Detective Morgan had discovered my parents used my spare key to access the villa. They'd shown the realtor old power of attorney documents that, while technically expired, looked convincing enough when combined with their possession of the key and knowledge of the property details. The forged signatures appeared to be digitally manipulated versions of my actual signature from old family documents. "The buyers are understandably upset," Detective Morgan explained. "They're a couple from New York who thought they were getting an incredible deal on a Cape Cod property. They had no idea it was fraudulent." "What about the money?" I asked. "The $1.2 million? That's where things get interesting. We've traced $400,000 to a payment made to the Golden Horizon Casino in Atlantic City. The remaining $800,000 was transferred to an offshore account we're still tracking. It doesn't appear to be in your parents' or sister's possession anymore." This new information sent my mind racing. Stephanie's gambling debts were $400,000, not $1.2 million as my parents claimed. Where had the additional $800,000 gone? When I wasn't handling the investigation or the business negotiations, I spent hours staring at the Tokyo skyline from my hotel window, trying to process the magnitude of this betrayal. The villa wasn't just a building. It represented everything I'd worked for, every sacrifice, every moment I'd chosen career advancement over personal relationships. I'd lost more than property. I'd lost my sense of safety, my trust in the people who should have protected me most. The realization that they viewed my greatest achievement as something they could simply take was devastating. My final week in Tokyo passed in a blur. Despite everything, we successfully closed the deal, $53 million, even better than projected. Amanda assured me the COO position was mine when we returned. "You've demonstrated extraordinary resilience," she said as we toasted with sake on our last night. Not many people could close a deal like this while their personal life was imploding. As my flight approached Boston, anxiety tightened around my chest like a vice. I was returning not to my beautiful oceanside sanctuary, but to a hotel room and a police investigation into my own family. The detective met me at the airport, updating me on the drive into the city. The investigation had deepened, with disturbing new elements emerging daily. "We've interviewed your sister," Detective Morgan said carefully. "Her story doesn't align with your parents. According to Stephanie, she owed approximately $400,000, but your parents claimed it was much more to justify the villa sale. We're looking into where that extra money went." I stared out the window at the familiar Boston skyline, feeling like a stranger in my own life. What about the villa itself? Is there any chance? "The sale has been frozen pending criminal investigation. The buyers can't take possession, but neither can you at this point. We need to preserve the scene for evidence collection." That night, alone in a sterile hotel room instead of my beloved home, I made a decision. This betrayal went beyond family dysfunction. Something more sinister was happening, and I would uncover every last detail, no matter how painful the truth might be. After one restless night in the hotel, I met with private investigator Marcus Wright, recommended by my company's legal team. A former FBI agent with kind eyes that contradicted his imposing build, Wright specialized in financial crimes and family fraud, a niche I hadn't realized existed until I needed it. "Family financial crimes are more common than you'd think," he explained in his office overlooking Boston Harbor. "What makes your case unusual is the scale and the missing $800,000. I hired him immediately. giving him authorization to dig into not just the villa sale, but my family's financial history. I want the complete truth, no matter how ugly. 3 days later, Wright called requesting an urgent meeting. His office walls were now covered with financial timelines, photos, and connection charts. "Your sister's boyfriend isn't just any gambler," he began, pointing to surveillance photos of a tall man with angular features. "James Mercer has connections to organized loan sharks operating in Atlantic City and Boston. He's been investigated twice for fraud, but never charged." My stomach tightened. Is Stephanie in danger? Possibly, but not in the way your parents claimed. Wright pinned another document to the board. "This is a transfer from your father's retirement account to an LLC controlled by Mercer. It happened 8 months ago, long before the villa sale." My father was paying Mercer directly? Why? That's where this gets complicated. Wright displayed bank statements, showing a pattern of transfers. "Your father has his own gambling problem, has for years. These payments suggest he's been borrowing from Mercer's associates to cover his losses and paying exorbitant interest." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My father, who had lectured me about financial responsibility my entire life, was a gambling addict himself? Where does Stephanie fit in? I asked, struggling to process this new information. "Based on my interviews, she started gambling after your father introduced her to casinos, claiming he was teaching her about calculated risks. Classic case of generational addiction patterns." Over the next week, the full picture emerged through Wright's investigation, police findings, and financial forensics. My father had accumulated nearly $600,000 in gambling debts to Mercer's associates. He'd been borrowing from my mother's inheritance to make payments while hiding the extent of his addiction. When Stephanie developed her own gambling problem, they became entangled with the same predatory lenders. The emergency $400,000 for Stephanie was real, but the additional $800,000 was for my father's debts, which he'd hidden from everyone, including my mother. The villa sale was their desperate attempt to solve both problems at once, with enough left over to temporarily mask the financial hole they'd dug. They never expected me to involve authorities. Their pattern had always been me quietly solving family problems with money. I met with my family's longtime attorney, Harold Greenbaum, who reluctantly confirmed parts of the story. "I advised against selling your property," he admitted, shame evident in his averted gaze. "But your father insisted it was with your knowledge. I should have contacted you directly. I failed in my professional duty." While the legal process advanced, I arranged to collect personal belongings from the villa. The new buyers, a doctor couple from Manhattan named Daniel and Sarah Williams, had been horrified to learn they'd purchased stolen property. "We just wanted a summer home," Sarah explained when I met them at the property with a police escort. "We had no idea. This is traumatizing for everyone involved." They graciously allowed me an hour to collect irreplaceable items. Walking through those rooms, now partially filled with their furniture alongside mine, was surreal. My sanctuary had become a crime scene, contaminated by betrayal. In my home office, I headed straight to the hidden wall safe behind a nautical map, a security feature I'd never told my family about. Inside were my most important documents, jewelry, and a backup hard drive containing financial records I'd kept over years of helping my family. These records would prove crucial. They documented every loan to Stephanie, every financial emergency my parents had called me about. The hard drive also contained security footage from cameras I'd installed after Stephanie's boyfriend had once shown too much interest in my home theater equipment. Reviewing this footage with Detective Morgan revealed the most damning evidence yet. My parents and Stephanie had brought prospective buyers through my home multiple times during my absence, clearly planning the sale well before my Tokyo trip. One clip showed my father practicing my signature at my own desk, using old documents as reference. Another captured my mother on the phone saying, "Kimberly never has to know where the money really went. She's too busy with her important career to check property records." The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't a desperate, last-minute decision. It was a calculated plan executed over weeks, possibly months. As Wright, the detective, and my legal team assembled the case, one question kept haunting me. Why? We weren't destitute. My parents had comfortable retirement savings. I had always helped with Stephanie's debts. Why resort to this elaborate fraud? The answer came from an unexpected source, my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, who I'd always been close to despite her living in California. Your father's gambling started after he was passed over for partnership at his firm 15 years ago, she revealed during a tearful phone call. Your mother enabled it, hiding it from everyone, including me. They've been living a financial life for years, maintaining appearances while drowning in debt. The timeline aligned perfectly with when my parents' attitude toward my success had soured, right when I began earning more than my father ever had. My achievements hadn't just made them uncomfortable, they'd been painful reminders of his perceived failures. And the saddest part, Aunt Patricia continued, is they've dragged Stephanie into the same cycle. Your success threatened their narrative that the system is rigged or luck determines everything. Your hard work proved them wrong, so they had to take you down a peg. As all these pieces came together, I realized I wasn't just dealing with a property crime. I was excavating the toxic foundation my entire family relationship had been built upon. 2 weeks after my return from Tokyo, I arranged to meet my parents at their home. My attorney advised against it, but I needed to look them in the eyes as they explained themselves. Detective Morgan agreed to wait nearby, not to ambush them, but to ensure the confrontation didn't escalate. Their house looked exactly as it always had: tidy front yard, faded welcome mat, the porch swing where I'd spent countless teenage hours reading to escape family tension. It felt strange how normal everything appeared when nothing would ever be normal again. My father opened the door, his face a mask of defensive anger that couldn't quite hide his fear. My mother hovered behind him, eyes red from crying, looking smaller than I remembered. You've really done it now, my father started as I stepped inside. Involving the police? Against your own family? Do you have any idea what you've put your mother through? I remained standing, declining their gestures toward the living room sofa. What I've put you through. You stole and sold my home. You forged my signature. You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible. We had no choice, my mother burst out. Stephanie was in danger. These weren't nice people she owed money to. $400,000, I stated flatly. That's what Stephanie owed. Not $1.2 million. Where's the other $800,000, Dad? The color drained from his face. My mother looked at him in confusion. What is she talking about, Thomas? She asked. In that moment, I realized my mother might not know everything. The detective had mentioned inconsistencies in their separate statements, but I had assumed they were lying together. I pulled out my tablet and displayed the financial records I'd compiled. 8 months of payments from your retirement account to entities controlled by James Mercer, Stephanie's boyfriend and, coincidentally, a known associate of loan sharks. Those were investments, my father stammered. In what, Dad? What investment requires payments to 5 different shell companies? My mother sank into a chair. Thomas, what has been going on? For a moment, I felt sorry for her, until I remembered her voice on the security footage, actively planning to sell my home behind my back. My father's defense crumbled visibly. His shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked every one of his 68 years. It started small, he finally said. Just weekend trips to Foxwoods after I was passed over for partnership. The story poured out of him. 15 years of escalating gambling, hidden from colleagues and extended family. Using my mother's inheritance to cover losses. Introducing Stephanie to casinos as a father-daughter bonding activity that had infected her with the same addiction. The $800,000 was to pay off my markers, he admitted. Mercer's people were threatening to go to my old firm to expose me to my colleagues. I couldn't bear the shame. So instead you stole from me? Your daughter? My voice cracked despite my efforts to remain composed. You've always been so capable, so independent, my mother interjected. Stephanie needs us more. She's not strong like you. That's not a compliment, Mom. You're saying I'm easier to victimize because I can survive it. You're punishing me for being resilient. We were going to pay you back, my father insisted weakly. Once things turned around. Things haven't turned around in 15 years, I replied. This isn't about money anymore. This is about trust and respect, neither of which you've shown me. I placed a folder on the coffee table. Here are your options. Option 1. You make full confessions, cooperate completely with the investigation, enter treatment for gambling addiction, and I'll ask the prosecutor for leniency. Option 2. You continue lying, I pursue maximum charges, and we communicate through attorneys for the foreseeable future. You would send your own parents to prison? My father asked incredulously. You would steal your daughter's home? I countered. We've already established family means nothing when it's convenient for you. I'm just following your example. The silence that followed felt like a physical presence in the room. Where's Stephanie now? I finally asked. We don't know, my mother admitted. She disappeared after the police questioned her. She's not answering our calls. As if on cue, the front door opened and Stephanie walked in. Thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes, she froze when she saw me. Kim, she whispered. I never thought they would actually sell your house. Yet you brought buyers through it. I have the security footage, Steph. She collapsed into the nearest chair. James said we were just getting appraisals. For insurance purposes. Then suddenly Dad had the money and gave most of it to James for investment opportunities. When I realized what happened, I tried to stop it, but it was too late. You could have called me, warned me. James took my phone. He's been controlling everything. She pulled up her sleeve to reveal finger-shaped bruises. I finally got away yesterday. I've been driving around, trying to figure out what to do. The revelation shifted something in the room. Stephanie wasn't just a willing participant. She was caught in a toxic web that our parents had helped create and that I had unknowingly enabled through years of financial rescues. We're all responsible for this in different ways, I said after a long pause. But it ends now. All of it. I laid out my terms. Full confessions from everyone, comprehensive financial transparency, addiction treatment, and a restraining order against James Mercer. In exchange, I would request minimum charges focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Why would you help us after what we did? My father asked. I'm not doing it for you. I replied honestly. I'm doing it for me. Because carrying hatred for my own family will only destroy me in the end. But make no mistake, our relationship will never be the same. Trust is like a mirror. You can fix it if it breaks, but you'll always see the cracks in the reflection. As I left their house, Detective Morgan stepped out of her unmarked car. They'll be contacting you shortly to make formal statements, I told her. All of them. Are you okay? She asked, genuine concern in her eyes. No, I admitted, but I will be. The legal process unfolded with excruciating slowness. My parents made full confessions as promised, laying out the entire scheme in detailed statements that matched the evidence we'd gathered. Stephanie provided crucial testimony about James Mercer's involvement, which led to his arrest 2 weeks later in a casino in Atlantic City. The district attorney, impressed by the thoroughness of our case, agreed to my request for a rehabilitation-focused approach for my family members. My father would serve 6 months in a minimum security facility followed by 5 years of probation and mandatory gambling addiction treatment. My mother received probation and community service, along with financial counseling. Stephanie entered an inpatient treatment program for both gambling addiction and trauma recovery. Her testimony against Mercer revealed a pattern of emotional and financial abuse that had trapped her in the relationship for years. I kept thinking I could win enough to pay everyone back and fix everything, she told me during a supervised visit to her treatment center. Every loss just made me more desperate to try again. It's like I was possessed. The restitution process for the villa was complicated. The sale was invalidated, but the Williams couple had already invested considerable funds in renovations and moving costs. Rather than force them into further hardship, I negotiated a fair leasing arrangement until the criminal case concluded, at which point they would have first option to purchase the property legally, if I decided to sell. Meanwhile, I needed a place to live. My hotel stays were becoming unsustainable, both financially and emotionally. To my surprise, Rebecca, my childhood friend, offered her guest house. Stay as long as you need, she insisted. helping me move the personal belongings I'd recovered from the villa. After everything you've been through, you shouldn't be alone in some soulless hotel. My colleagues at work showed unexpected support as well. Despite my concerns that the family scandal would damage my professional reputation, they rallied around me. Amanda formally announced my promotion to COO during a company meeting, specifically citing my extraordinary resilience and ethical leadership during personal challenges. The coworkers I'd kept at arm's length for years organized a fundraiser to help with my legal expenses. Jessica, my assistant, spent weekends helping me sort through documents and rebuild the financial records that had been compromised during the fraud. "You've always been fair to everyone here," she explained when I expressed surprise at their support. "People notice that kind of integrity." Through the legal proceedings, I discovered I wasn't alone in experiencing family financial fraud. The district attorney connected me with an advocacy group for victims of similar crimes, where I met others whose family members had stolen identities, forged documents, and betrayed trust. Diana, whose mother had emptied her college fund to support a shopping addiction, became a particularly close friend. "Family financial abuse is different," she explained during one of our support group meetings. "Society expects you to forgive because they're family, but they violated that relationship first." These connections helped me navigate the complex emotions of pursuing justice against my own parents. The guilt, the second-guessing, the unwanted sympathy from people who suggested I should just forgive and forget. Others who had walked this path understood without explanation. 4 months after the villa sale, authorities recovered approximately $650,000 of the missing funds. Mercer had transferred much of it through various accounts, but forensic accountants managed to freeze significant portions before they disappeared completely. This money went into a court-controlled account pending final resolution of all criminal charges. The neighbors from my Cape Cod community proved to be crucial allies as well. Several provided testimonies about suspicious activities they'd observed while I was in Tokyo. Mrs. Henderson, who lived across the street, had even photographed my parents showing people through the house, documentation that strengthened the fraud case. "I knew something wasn't right," she told me over coffee. "You loved that house too much to sell it without even being present." Media interest in the case grew after Mercer's arrest revealed connections to larger fraud operations along the East Coast. I declined most interview requests, but agreed to one with a journalist specializing in financial crimes. The resulting article focused not on family drama but on the warning signs of elder financial abuse and the reverse phenomenon of parents exploiting adult children's assets. This publicity led to more victims coming forward with similar stories, strengthening the broader case against Mercer's network. The prosecutor informed me that my willingness to pursue charges despite family connections had helped build cases for victims who had previously been too ashamed or intimidated to come forward. "Your sister wasn't the only one being manipulated," she explained. Mercer's operation specifically targeted families with addiction vulnerabilities, creating dependency, and then exploiting family ties to access larger assets. Understanding the systematic nature of the predation helped me contextualize my family's actions, not excuse them, but see how they had been both perpetrators and victims in a complex web of addiction and exploitation. As the court proceedings continued, I gradually rebuilt my life from the scattered pieces. I worked with a therapist specializing in family trauma, learning to set boundaries without being consumed by anger. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during years of career focus. I even started dating again, with a newfound appreciation for transparency and honest communication. 6 months after that devastating email from Tokyo, I stood on the deck of my leased apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, not my beloved villa, but a pleasant space that represented a new beginning. My phone rang with a call from Detective Morgan. "The judge has issued the final ruling on asset recovery," she said. "With the recovered funds and restitution payments ordered from all parties, you'll receive approximately $1.1 million. Not the full value of the property, but substantial." "Thank you for everything," I told her, genuinely grateful for her persistence on my case. "There's one more thing," she added. "Your sister provided information that helped identify 3 more victims of similar schemes." The DA wanted you to know that your decision to pursue this case has helped others recover their losses as well. After hanging up, I watched the sunset paint the harbor waters in golds and pinks. The money mattered, of course. It represented justice and acknowledgement of the wrong done to me. But more valuable was the knowledge that by standing firm, by refusing to be silently victimized, I had perhaps prevented others from experiencing the same betrayal. 6 months can change everything and nothing at the same time. The seasons had completed half a cycle since the betrayal, summer fading to winter, and now spring tentatively emerging again. Yet some mornings I still woke expecting to hear ocean waves outside my window. With the recovered funds and my continued salary as COO, I purchased a small but charming cottage on the North Shore. Not directly on the water like my villa had been, but close enough to smell the salt air. It wasn't a replacement for what I'd lost, but rather a symbol of my new beginning. Smaller, perhaps, but entirely mine in a way that felt more secure. My healing journey began with reluctant therapy sessions that gradually became the cornerstone of my week. Dr. Meredith Lewis specialized in family betrayal trauma and financial abuse, guiding me through the complex grief that comes with losing both property and trust simultaneously. "You're mourning multiple losses," she explained during an early session. "The physical home, yes, but also the family you thought you had, the narrative you believed about your relationships, and your sense of security." The hardest lesson was learning that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. I could release my anger without inviting the same people back into my life to hurt me again. My parents completed their legal consequences with varying degrees of genuine remorse. My father, after initial resistance, embraced recovery with surprising commitment once the weight of secrecy lifted from his shoulders. "I've been living a double life for 15 years, he admitted during a supervised family therapy session. "There's a strange relief in finally being known for who I really am, even if that person is deeply flawed." My mother struggled more with acknowledging her enabling role. "I was just trying to protect everyone," she insisted repeatedly, before finally breaking down during our 4th session. "I failed all of you. I failed myself." Stephanie's recovery proved most transformative. Removed from both our parents' influence and James Mercer's manipulation, she confronted not just her gambling addiction but the family dynamics that had cast her as the eternal victim. "They needed me to be helpless," she realized aloud during a joint therapy session. "Your success threatened them, Kim, but my failures validated their worldview." 3 months into her treatment program, Stephanie enrolled in community college courses, displaying an aptitude for accounting and financial management that surprised everyone except perhaps herself. "I understand money patterns," she explained when I visited her on campus. "I just used that understanding destructively before. Now I'm learning to build instead of break." My relationship with each family member evolved differently. With Stephanie, careful reconciliation became possible as she demonstrated consistent responsibility and respect for boundaries. We weren't close as we once had been as children, but we were developing something new, a relationship between equals rather than rescuer and rescued. With my parents, I maintained more distance. We spoke monthly, met quarterly for supervised visits, but I no longer shared details about my finances, home security, or travel plans. Trust, once broken so completely, could only be rebuilt in the smallest increments. Meanwhile, I discovered the family I had chosen rather than inherited. Rebecca, who had offered her guest house during my darkest days, became the sister I confided in about daily struggles and small victories. My colleague Jessica evolved from efficient assistant to trusted friend who understood my professional drive without judgment. The support group for financial fraud victims became an unexpected source of community. We celebrated each legal victory, each emotional breakthrough, each step toward healing. Some members had reconciled with family perpetrators. Others had established permanent separation. No path was presented as superior, only as individually necessary for healing. I established a small foundation using a portion of the recovered funds, providing resources for victims of family financial exploitation. Working with both legal advocates and trauma counselors, We created guides, support networks, and emergency funds for those navigating the complex intersection of family loyalty and personal protection. Financial abuse doesn't leave visible bruises, I explained at our foundation's first public event. But the violation of trust creates wounds that can affect every relationship moving forward if not properly addressed. Through helping others, I found purpose in my pain. Each person who sought our services reminded me that standing up for myself hadn't been selfish, but necessary, not just for me, but for the broader pattern of exploitation that thrives in silence and shame. New traditions replaced old ones. Instead of obligatory holiday gatherings filled with unspoken resentments, I hosted chosen family dinners where genuine connection flourished. I traveled not to escape my life, but to enrich it, bringing back stories and photographs to share with people who celebrated rather than envied my experiences. On the anniversary of discovering the betrayal, I visited the Cape Cod villa one last time. The Williams family had purchased it legally after the case concluded, and they graciously allowed me this closure visit. Standing on the beach where I had once felt most at peace, I realized something surprising. The property no longer held the same emotional power over me. It was beautiful, certainly, but it was just a building, just land. The true sanctuary I had been seeking wasn't an oceanfront property, but in honest relationships and internal security that couldn't be stolen or sold. That evening, back in my cottage, I wrote letters to each family member, not to send, but to articulate the lessons I needed them to understand. To my father, your worth was never determined by your career success or financial status. By chasing the high of gambling rather than addressing your disappointments honestly, you created the very losses you feared. To my mother, protection that enables destruction is not love. True support means holding people accountable, not shielding them from consequences. To Stephanie, you always had strength within you. The role of family victim was comfortable but limiting. Your recovery proves you are capable of far more than any of us recognized. To myself, your success is valid. Your boundaries are necessary. Your forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not an obligation you owe others. The deepest lesson in all of this was recognizing that family patterns repeat until someone has the courage to break the cycle. Addiction, enabling, financial secrecy, emotional manipulation, these traveled through generations of my family until they crashed against my unwillingness to perpetuate them further. Breaking generational patterns isn't just about refusing to repeat specific behaviors. It's about examining the underlying beliefs that fuel those behaviors, the idea that love means financial rescue, that family loyalty trumps personal boundaries, that success should be sacrificed for others' comfort. The peace I found wasn't perfect or complete. Some days still brought anger, some nights still brought tears. But it was an authentic peace built on truth rather than pretense, on boundaries rather than sacrifice, on self-respect rather than endless giving. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that standing firm doesn't make you selfish. Protecting yourself doesn't mean you don't love your family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for them, is to break the cycle, even when it hurts. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to family for your own well-being? What helped you through that difficult process? Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to hear that their boundaries matter. Thank you for listening to my journey. Sometimes sharing our hardest moments helps others feel less alone in theirs.